What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're discussing some of the most popular transfers in and out ahead of Game Week 28. And if you didn't already know there's a lot of blank and double game weeks coming up, then you definitely would by the players that we're going to discuss in this one. So I'm going to start off with João Cancelo in just a second. I have written my weekly article for Game Week 28 for 888 Sport. There is a link in the description below if you want to check that out as well. Now, with Cancelo, right, I don't need to sit here and tell you how good he is. We all know that, right? And the fact that he's been nailed on this season has just made him even better as well. The key question is, are 92,000 plus FPL managers making a mistake by selling him this week? Game week 28. Look at the next 5 fixtures. That's really what we're looking at here. Because let's not forget, you can buy him back. And I know it feels kind of hard to do because he's been so good. He is so highly owned still, even with the amount of managers that have sold. He's still owned by 43% of the entire game, but he has already dropped in price. I sold him in Game Week 26. I think he was 7.2 million. He's down to 7.1. I don't know if he'll drop again before the deadline for 28, but I do think he could drop at least one more time. Then he'll be down to 7. And so the amount you're kind of losing on him, bearing in mind, you know, you're gaining a bit of money. If you never buy him back, then you've made that money, and that's great, right? It's back into your team. But the money you'd lose, and that's how a lot of people look at it, is going to be less and less if he keeps going down in price. I don't think he's not going to go back to like 6.5, but he could go to 7, maybe even 6.9 at some point. Next 5 game weeks is where the key issue is for people, right? So he's got to play Man United, Liverpool, and has a blank game week, right? Crystal Palace away, Burnley away, good fixtures. As long as he plays both of them, bearing in mind, obviously, Champions League and stuff is back. I'm sure he's got 2 clean sheets there, and obviously attack and returns are always a possibility. But I think with Man United in particular, yes, Man City are the better team. Man City are probably odds-on favourite to absolutely win that game. It's at home. It's all kind of stacked in their favour. I'm not expecting Man United to win that game, to be honest, but the key question is, can Man United score in that game? And I think they can. I think Man United do not really want the ball. I think still at the heart of it, they're kind of better when they get to a counter-attack, and they're going to get to do that against Man City, and I think that will kind of play into Man United's hands. So as soon as the clean sheet's gone, of course, right, you can get attack and returns, and there is, of course, the potential to get a clean sheet too. But I think the amount of kind of expected points for that Man United game's got to be fairly low. And the same for Liverpool as well. And then he doesn't even play in Game Week 30. So if you're thinking about bringing in a defender that has a double game week this week, maybe has a game in Game Week 30 as well, or just has better fixtures, and is cheaper, so you can spend that money on another player, I don't think this is a bad transfer out. And I know in our heads we always, halfway through a season we start thinking about season keepers. I'm never going to sell Cancelo. I'm never going to sell Salah. I'm never going to sell Bowen, who we're going to talk about later on as well, by the way. But certain situations crop up in FPL from time to time. And right now, this is one of the weirdest situations I've ever seen. There's so many more double game weeks than normal. There's obviously small double game weeks and big ones. Like usually we only have like maybe 2 or 3 weeks where there's double game weeks. This season there's loads, so it is a really weird situation right now. And I don't think managers are making a bad choice by selling him. I think there is that fear that he's going to absolutely just haul when you sell him, and he has got a bunch of double-digit hauls already this season. But if you're bringing in, say, a Chelsea defender, okay, they also miss Game Week 30, but they have 3 fixtures over the next 2, and the fixtures after Game Week 30 are really good, and they've still got fixtures to rearrange. And someone like Rudiger, for example, is pretty much nailed on as well. So I don't think you lose a massive amount by selling Cancelo. I think if you're one of those people that is wildcarding, or even just making transfers, and you want to hold him, you can get to the team you want without selling him. That's perfectly fine. I'm not saying he's a must-sell or anything like that, but I don't think people that are selling him are making a mistake. And I think there are points to be gained over this period. You can always buy him back later. Just remember that. So let's jump from one defender to another one. Cancelo being sold, Rudiger being heavily brought in. Now, some of these will, of course, be wild cards that people are putting him on. But ultimately, a lot more FPL managers than before this week are now going to own Rudiger. Nearly 180,000 transfers in already. We know how good the Chelsea defence is. We know that Rudiger is pretty much nailed on. I think there's one game so far this season in the league that he didn't play. Otherwise, he's played 90 minutes in every single one. And the fixtures just look great. Look, they've got 6 fixtures over the next 6 game weeks. Part of that is because they've got a double this week and they blank in game week 30. There's plenty of clean sheet potential there. I'm not saying that they're going to keep 6 clean sheets, right? Far from it. Leeds are good in attack. Southampton can be as well. Who knows about the rest of the fixtures? But ultimately, it's looking pretty damn good. So there's not really anything bad to say. I don't think anybody is making a mistake by bringing him in. I may even bring him in this week as well. The two kind of questions that people have about Rudiger is, one, is he the best Chelsea defender to bring in this week? And 2, should you be selling a Liverpool defender to get him? So let's tackle the Chelsea defenders first. Realistically, the only other options for me are Thiago Silva, Reece James and Marcos Alonso. Thiago Silva is 0.5 million cheaper, which is good. And although we see him as a rotation kind of threat, he has played a lot of minutes across multiple competitions and is barely being rested at the moment. For me, though, I just think we have seen in the past that he has had to have a rest over multiple games. He is obviously a lot older than Rudiger as well. And I think for 0.5 million more, I would just want the peace of mind. If you can only get to Thiago Silva, it might not be a bad punt. But if you've got the money, I don't see why you wouldn't just buy Rudiger, personally. The other two, then, you've got Reece James and Marcos Alonso. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's just fear of missing out or something. I actually think there's a chance that Marcos Alonso outscores Reece James in game week 28. And that's all I'm saying. It's just game week 28. In the future, I definitely think Reece James wins. But Reece James has been out for a long time. I think it was a hamstring injury as well. Is he going to come back and then play Burnley and Norwich and Newcastle? I think most people would agree he's probably missing out at least one of those games. Now, if he misses out Newcastle, it's not so bad because you've probably got a bench, right? Someone to come on. If you're not bench boosting, of course. If you're bench boosting, it's a little bit more difficult. And happy days, you get the double in 28. It's maybe not that much of an issue. But if he misses one of the game week 28 games, then I think it's better just to get Rudiger right now. I think for me, you need to decide how many Chelsea defenders you want going forward. I need to kind of properly plan my team before the deadline. But I think getting Rudiger now and Reece James later is not a bad plan. It all just depends on the minutes. If you think Reece James comes back in after not having played a match for a while, getting 70 minutes in the FA Cup, like 70 minutes in the Carabao Cup, 15 in the FA Cup, and then plays all 3 of those games, then he is the one to get. Marcos Alonso, I think, looks great for this week, so I do think there's a chance that he plays both games, but at any point, if they switch to a back 4, they could play Sarr instead, although he didn't play that well in the FA Cup, so it's a tricky one. I'm just not sure. I just don't think Alonso is a great long-term option versus Rudiger and Reece James, but I do think he could be great for this week. And then about the Liverpool defender, I'm thinking of selling Van Dijk to Rudiger because I think over game week 28 and 29, Rudiger's got a higher chance of points. He's also less money, so I can use that money in the future to hopefully upgrade someone else. And also from kind of game week 31 onwards, Chelsea fixtures are a little bit better. And as much as I think Van Dijk's a great option and you don't need to go out of your way to sell him, I probably would if I could get a different Liverpool defender and just go for someone different instead, like Robertson. Maybe even get Jota if he's looking like an option again as well. So I'm probably going to do that. If I had Robertson, it's a little bit more difficult. And I think you'd really need to want to spend that money straight away. If you're doing Robertson to Rudiger, that's a lot of cash saved. Can use that money straight away. If not, I'd probably just keep Robertson in. Although Liverpool's fixtures are just tougher. They got West Ham, I think it's then like Brighton away as well, and Arsenal away too. So it's not that easy in 28 and 29. I'm not saying they can't get clean sheets, of course. But I don't know. With Robertson, it's a much harder sell, I think. I think if you're not using that money straight away to upgrade someone else, I think you just probably keep Robertson. So there you go. I think Rudiger's better than Thiago Silva. I think Reece James is the long-term pick, but I do think there's worries over his game time next 2 game weeks. Alonso's very short-term. I think Van Dijk to Rudiger is not a bad sell. Robertson's a little bit harder. Willock and Newcastle players, very popular picks going into game week 28 for good reason, right? They're back-to-back double game weeks. They got 4 fixtures over game week 28 and 29. Nearly 160,000 transfers in for Willock, which does seem a little bit crazy, right? Because he's not really been on my radar too much. But of course, double game weeks happen and players should be given more weight in terms of the points they're going to score when they've got 2 fixtures, right? It's always been like that and it always will be like that. I'm not sure whether he's a good buy, but I'm going to explain why and in what circumstances he might be. So although he's got 4 fixtures in the next 2 game weeks, if you add in game week 30, he's then 4 fixtures over 3 game weeks. So if you've got a player like Rafinha or an Arsenal midfielder or maybe like a Wolves attacker instead, obviously I appreciate there isn't too many Wolves midfielders to go for right now, but if you've got one of them, they also have 4 fixtures over the next 3 game weeks, right? It just so happens they don't have back-to-back doubles. They have 1 double game week, 1 single game week, and then another single game week. So someone like Rafinha, for me, is better than Willock. Someone like Saka is better than Willock. Someone like Martinelli is also probably better than Willock. If, though, however, you're bringing him in this week or you're wildcarding him in, you're keeping him for the back-to-back doubles and then transferring him out for a player that plays in game week 30, then you are gaining an extra fixture there, and that could be a decent way of doing it. That all just comes down to how many kind of transfers you need or want to use. So I don't personally think he's a fantastic pick. I think maybe he's doing a little bit better recently. I think Newcastle in general are doing okay. And like I said, if I could get him in and then transfer him straight back out, then that's okay. But then you've got to use 2 transfers to do it. It's a little bit different if you're on a wild card and then can get rid of him after game week 29. But outside of wildcards, I just don't know if I'd bring him in. Spurs away, Wolves at home straight afterwards is just not fantastic. Leicester at home, okay, for an attacker versus a defender is probably all right. But overall, it's just not a great fixture run. So I think he looks great for 28-29, but I think it really depends what you're going to do with him afterwards. And the fact that Newcastle are blanking in game week 30 definitely kind of puts a mark against him. I think there's better attackers, but for 5.7 million, there probably aren't. You know, if you're going for kind of 5.7 or below, then you're maybe looking at someone like Ramsey at Villa, for example, who is a bit cheaper, would be a bit more of an enabler. But yeah, above that, there's a bunch more midfielders. It all depends how much cash you want to buy. So I'm not saying it's a bad pick, but I'm not really too excited about it, especially when you've got to play Chelsea away as one of those fixtures as well. 230,000 transfers out for Jarrod Bowen. Extremely popular transfer out. And I don't hate it. I've already sold him myself, right? Same as Cancelo on my wildcard in game week 26. And interestingly, when I sold him, I thought it was because he wasn't going to have, well, not the only reason, but I didn't think he was going to have a fixture in game week 30, and now he's actually got one. So if anything, he's like a better pick now than he was when I sold him. Obviously, Liverpool away is not great, and he doesn't have a double game week, but Villa, Everton, Brentford, and Burnley, they're all not bad, right? So I don't think he's a bad hold, but again, as always, it's going to depend what you're doing with him. If I think about my midfield right now, I've got Saka, Rafinha, Salah, Son and Ramsey. They've all got a double game week either in 28 or 29. And there's other players I want to buy. Maddison's got good fixtures coming up. He's got a better fixture in game week 30. He's got plenty of double game weeks to come after game week 30 as well. That's already 6 midfielders without even thinking about anyone else. So I see why people are selling him. And again, I think over the next kind of 2 to 3 game weeks, there are plenty of midfielders that would outscore him. I think Rafinha and Saka are probably the 2 that spring to mind pretty quickly. And again, like Cancelo, you can buy him back. His price hasn't necessarily gone up as much as maybe Cancelo's has since you brought him in. And if you wanted him back for like 31, 32, 33 where the fixtures are good, you could bring him back in. But I just think the way the fixtures are going to fall for kind of West Ham, they're not going to be as key to our FPL teams going forward. And I know there's always like the narrative that we get sucked into double game week players and we forget about the good players outside of that. But the fact is there's going to be a lot of smaller double game weeks this season and for the rest of the season. And therefore certain players are just not going to be in our minds as much. So I actually like this sell. I don't think it's a bad move at all. I think the fact that he now plays in game week 30, even though it's against Spurs, does kind of lean me towards more, if you wanted to keep, it's still a good move, right? He's not a bad hold at all, but I think in the short term, you can definitely make better use of your money. And if you're wildcarding after game week 30, I think there's even more reason to sell him, because there's a few midfielders 28 to game week 30 that could absolutely outscore him. Then if you wanted him back or needed him back, you could wildcard him back in. So maybe a little bit different if you've already used your wildcard, but ultimately I don't see him in many teams going forward. I know he's still highly owned, but I think a lot of people are going to sell him, and I don't think it's a bad decision. So Livramento, again, another defender on the Trans Tips video. 3 of them this week so far. 118,000 transfers in, very popular. Interestingly, I got rid of him on my wildcard, and I don't know if regret's the wrong word, because at the time he wasn't nailed on, but he's got his place back, right? Pro, I think, had a positive COVID test. Livramento comes back in the team. He keeps his place for the next game. And now, I think it was the FA Cup, Walker-Peters went off with a bit of a hamstring injury. That's why Hasenhüttl said he subbed him. Now, I don't know how bad that's going to be, but it's another reason reason that Livramento might just play again. So I think at this point he's probably got, I wouldn't say lucky because he's played really well this season, but when you kind of lose your place or seemingly lose your place and then get it back like this, he's probably going to keep it now. So it's happy days, right? He has gone up to 4.4 million, so it's a little bit annoying he's not quite so cheap. But I like this move. I think, again, as always, team dependent. Can you get through game week 30 with him in your team? If you can, the double looks pretty good. Watford at home, Leeds away. They're not bad fixtures. And although then the fixtures get a little bit trickier, I don't see him as a player that you'd have to play every week anyway, right? A lot of us got Trent. A lot of people looking to bring in a Chelsea defender, maybe a second one, maybe to keep Cancelo. There's a lot of defenders you could play ahead of Livramento, and he's just there if you need him. You know he's a little bit attacking as well. He can always get you an assist, maybe even a goal. And when the fixtures get a little bit better afterwards, which again, if I just quickly bring up the transfer page for Southampton, I've got Broya in my team. After that Chelsea and Arsenal game, they've got Brighton, then Palace, then Brentford. They've got Burnley to rearrange as well. So at some point they're going to get that another double game week. I think he's a really good enabler, to be honest, at 4.4 million. I don't think there's too many better for that price right now. So yeah, as long as he keeps his place, I guess there is a small risk that doesn't happen. But I just think how he's played when he's come back into the team, he's going to be perfectly fine keeping that kind of right back spot left locked down. And Walker Peters, if he does come back, could always go back to left back as well. So there is a bit of competition for those fullback spots because Walker Peters can obviously play left and right. But I think Livramento is looking pretty good. So I think it's a good buy, good double, good fixtures, good long-term fixtures, good enabler, all that good stuff. If you have enjoyed that video, please do give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you are new around here as well. I'll be back later on for another video. Probably be like a game week preview, final thoughts thing after the press conferences. And obviously don't forget to check out my 888 sport article in the description below. I'll catch you again later.